You're listening to Puma Podcast.
Calls for reform are nothing new. They're unsurprising and in fact warranted, given the state of our politics, riddled with corruption, dynastic clans, and even violence. But what does reform actually look like? How long does it take? And how is it measured? Balangkas ng Bukas is a show powered by Puma Podcast, seeking to answer these questions. What you're about to hear is episode 2 of the show season 2, a continuation of the story of Sangguniang Kabataan, how it was nearly abolished and the reforms that saved it.
I'm Adriel Nisperos, a development worker and a youth empowerment advocate.
And I'm Macy Joven, a journalist and an ordinary citizen who's part of the Katipunan ng Kabataan or the youth voters of a barangay. And this is season 2 of
Balangkas ng Bukas, Stories of Major Policy Reforms. Isang podcast ng Youth Leadership for Democracy o YouthLED, a project of the United States Agency for International Development and the Asia Foundation, powered by Puma Podcast.
In this podcast, we look at how we won the rights, freedoms, and privileges we have now. At babalikan natin ang lahat ng pinagdaanan natin para mabuo ang mga mahalagang polisiyang nagbibigay ginhawa sa buhay nating mga Pilipino.
Titingnan natin kung paano nangyayari ang reforma at ang papel ng mga kabataan sa prosesong ito. In this season, we'll talk about the SK Reform Act of 2015 and what led to it, as well as the ways in which the youth can participate in public policy through initiatives like Project Citizen.
To start things off, let's first understand how the policy formulation process works. So in general, this is how it goes. Unang-una, nagkakaroon ng agenda setting o pag-identify ng mga problemang gustong masolusyonan at pagpa-prioritize ng mga ito. Pangalawa ay ang stakeholder involvement. Dito ginaganap ang mga consultations, surveys, meetings with the sectors na apektado sa issue para mapag-aralan ang nangyayari on the ground. Para tong yung data gathering actually. Ito yung ine-explain ni Senator Bam sa previous episode natin.
Yes, the third step naman is policy formulation o ang pagdadraft ng mga policy papers, kung saan naka-outline ng goals, strategies, budget, and plans for implementation to address a specific problem. Fourth is legislation or review, where the legislative branch of the government deliberates on the proposed policy. Chine-check nilang maigi kung may mga possible implications ba at kung gaano ka-feasible at effective ang nasabing policy. And lastly, we have implementation and monitoring. Pagpasado na ang polisiya, the concerned departments of the government are given authority to implement it. At nagkakaroon dito ng mga regular evaluation o assessment ng impact ng policy.
Right, so saan naman papasok ang kabataan dito? Let's listen to our first guest of the episode.
So hi everyone. My name is Carlo Africa, currently Executive Director for Hiraya. Hiraya is a youth-based NGO focused on creating spaces that allow people to do the extraordinary.
Kung ituturo natin sa mga listeners natin ngayon, yung different entry points for young people, whether or especially those na hindi naman in position of power, no, for them to contribute meaningfully sa isang public policy, sa pag-form ng public policy, saan-saan kaya yung mga entry points na yun? Like, is it in the research part, the lobbying part, or the implementation part?
So siguro, I'll give 4 pathways, no? First pathway, and I think ito yung pinaka-important pathway, is run. Let's not appeal to the people on the table. Let's be on the table. Tayo na mismo mag-decide. Wag na tayo mag-lobby sa mga nag-decide, no? Consider running for the SK. Marami pa rin tayong vacant positions actually. Supposedly, magkakaroon tayo ng elections next year sa December. So, maybe part of the consideration, if you are very passionate about youth policies, youth programs, consider running for the SK. So, yun yung pathway number 1. Yung pathway number 2 is you can actually join some of the local youth development offices, yung LIDOs natin. Lalo na in bigger cities and municipalities. We have very robust local youth development offices and very big provincial youth development offices. So one of the best parts for you to actually lobby is when you're actually in the system. Kasi makikita nyo bakit ba hindi ba ina-accept ni Lido yung aking mga program. Kasi makita nyo realities, baka kulang sa budget, baka iba yung priority ni Mayor, mga ganun bagay. So, opportunity for you is to actually just join our local youth development officers. But sa mga areas na siguro hindi ganun kalaki. Kasi may mga LGUs talaga tayo na hindi ganun kalaki yung budget. Pwede kayo mag-create ng sarili nyong youth organization, or if meron na kayong youth organization, and then you can apply to become part of the local youth development council. So again, you're part of civil society, but you're formally in the process of policy making. Meaning you are required, or you're asked to be part of that process because they will have to consult to you. So instead na kayo talaga yung pupunta, trying to lobby to them, you're part of the actual process. Yung fourth process is yung lobbying process. And I think important to because, and important for you to know the SK, the LYDO, and the LYDC, because these are avenues for you to lobby. So it's run, join local government, join local youth development council, ito yung civil society organization, or lobby as an outsider.
Alright. Siguro mag-zoom in lang tayo dun sa some of the other pathways na na-mention. Kasi yung papunta sa lobbying pathway. And then we've observed din sa mga youth coalitions namin na some of them write position papers na pinapresent sa mga officials. Siguro yung una when it comes to like writing position papers, ano bang parang best way to approach that? Like, how does it help inform yung mga decisions ng mga officials? And who can write them?
Okay, so for me, yung important step is before you actually give a position paper, kilalanin nyo muna yung bibigyan nyo. So maganda to have initial conversation with them already. Kasi if kilala na kayo, mas likely niya babasahin yun eh. So I think yung important na gawin. Kami sa Hiraya, yung process namin actually, yung first step namin is identifying the problem. Right now, for example, we're developing a news code bill. So buong bill siya, bagong bill siya. Yung process namin is actually taking a look at institutions and yung legal framework natin, kumbaga. Understanding, so ito yung institutions natin, what are the institutions involved when it comes to this particular issue? So in this case, for example, if national, for example, si NYC for sure kasama, DILG kasama rin siya. At the local level, nandiyan si Lido, si Mayor, si Councilor, si SK.
NYC stands for National Youth Commission, and DILG for Department of the Interior and Local Government.
So it's understanding what are the institutions na to, and ano yung actual roles nila, whether legal roles or meta-legal, meaning hindi nakalagay sa batas pero ginagawa talaga niya yung role na yun. Kaya sometimes, if titingnan natin yung institutions pati legal, nandun na pala, hindi na pala natin kailangan ng policy kasi the policy is already there. Hindi lang magawa ng ating institutions kasi may implementation challenge. So now yung question natin, if ito yung implementation challenge, mayroon na tayong policy, how do we solve the challenges? Baka hindi pala kailangan ng bagong policy. So, yun yung unang ginagawa namin. So, understanding the relationship of the institutions with the legal framework and finding implementation challenges na meron tayo. But to do that, we do desk research. So, talagang titingnan namin, right now, I think we have like 8 or 12 na mga laws na related sa youth political participation. At the national level lang to. And we're trying to look at ano yung provisions na related dito. But aside from the desk research that we're doing, we're also doing FGDs or KIIs, yung mga focus group discussions natin or yung ating key informant interviews. So we've identified people that we wanted to talk to identify ano yung mga hypothesis namin when it comes to problem solving or identifying the problem. Ito po ba, parang, kumbaga interview namin sila to find out, ito ba talaga yung problem nyo? Para ma-identify namin na, okay, if yan talaga, ito yung potential solution na pwede namin bigay. After namin ma-identify yung problem, we try to find out ano yung best practices natin. Ano yung ginagawa here in the Philippines and in other parts of the world in terms of solving this problem. So yung example na mabibigay ko for clearly yung SK Reform Act, yung best practices nakita nila was in CDO and in NAGA, and they applied that here sa ating new law, no? Sa SK Reform Act natin. And then doon kami gagawa ng policy recommendations. Ito yung process namin. Ito yung issue, ito yung problem, ito yung implementation challenge, ito yung best practices around the Philippines and around the world, ito yung recommendations namin. But ako as a policy practitioner, I take it a step further by not just giving recommendations, but giving actual laws. As in, magsusulat tayo ng actual bill, magsusulat tayo ng actual ordinance. Because again, it goes back to sino may kausap natin. Kausap natin ay lawmakers or mga counselors na may ibang iniisip for sure. Kasi if bibigyan lang natin sila ng policy recommendation na dapat palakasin ang local youth development officer, pero hindi malinaw how that exactly looks like, isipin pa ng stakeholder, okay, kailangan pa magsulat ng isang bagong ordinance na matagal, na hindi ko priority in the first place. Very likely, hindi niya napapansinin. But if papakita mo sa kanya na kailangan natin a stronger lie to office, ito yung provision that actually implements that makes it happen. Maisip niya, okay, clear to sa akin, ito lang yung tingin ko kailangan natin changes, pwede natin ipasa.
Like anyone ba? Anyone pwedeng magsulat? Kahit na hindi sila part of an organization, gano'n?
Yes, anyone can write. I think yung requirement lang is register. Actually, kahit hindi ka nga registered voter, basta registered voters yung mga nag-sign. Okay lang yun. Yes.
Grabe no, ang daming shinare ni Af na mga paraan para makasali ang mga kabataan dito sa pagbubuo nga ng mga polisiya. Mula sa pagsulat ng position papers hanggang sa pag-join ng SK, LYDC at iba't ibang CSOs, no? Hindi tayo mauubusan ng paraan upang i-exercise ang karapatang ito.
At tandaan din natin na hindi lang limitado sa mga may posisyon sa gobyerno ang opportunity to contribute to the community. Dito sa Balangkas ng Bukas, gusto nating bigyan ng mas malalim na ideya ang mga listeners kung ano nga ba ang itsura ng youth participation IRL o in real life. At yan ang ibabahagi ng ating susunod na guest na nagpasa ng isang mental health ordinance sa Molo, Iloilo City. Ito'y bunga ng kanyang pakikipag-ugnayan sa komunidad at sa SK ng kanilang barangay.
Ako po si Janeline Kate Bubok. Pwede niyo akong tawagin Jan. Ako po ay from Iloilo at ako ang founder and executive director ng Atipan PH, isang organisasyon na nagcha-champion ng mga karapatan ng mga bata at also ng mental health.
Ayan, thank you, Jen. So, ang question namin siguro to start things off is, what's your particular involvement in the enacting nung sa mental health ordinance sa Molo sa Iloilo City?
Okay. Nagsimula po talaga yung proyekto namin noong umattend po ako ng isang seminar. Tapos nakasama ko doon yung isang community member na isa siyang barangay health worker at isang volunteer sa barangay rin. At nakwento niya sa amin yung recent na nangyari na sunog doon sa barangay San Juan Molo. Tapos sabi niya na hindi daw siya makatulog kada gabi dahil natatakot siya na baka maulit-ulit yung sunog. Kasi yung sunog na yun, grabe talaga yung resulta sa barangay nila. Like, nasunog yung mga bahay kasi nga made of light materials yung houses sa kanilang community. Tapos sabi namin ng kasamahan ko sa may organisasyon na why don't we visit their community to see kung ano yung nangyari, ano yung estado ng komunidad nila. Kasi we were bothered by the fact na kung yung mga adults nga ay grabe yung na-experience nila because of what happened na sunog. Paano na lang yung mga bata? So, pumunta kami doon, nakipag-usap kami, harapan, tao sa tao, nag-house to house kami. Gusto naming malaman kung ano pa yung kailangan ng komunidad na hindi na ibigay after ng sunog. And sabi namin na, why don't we do something na hindi lang siya band-aid solution? So, why don't we train the barangay health workers, the youth, the parents, the SK officials, and the barangay officials themselves how to give mental health and psychosocial support para if ever may mangyari mang sakuna, alam na nila yung gagawin nila. So, ayun po yung ginawa namin. Nag-start muna kami na i-gauge yung knowledge ng community about mental health. And then pagkatapos po nun, kinausap namin yung ang mga barangay at SK officials kung willing ba sila na suportahan yung programa namin, na magpapatraining kami, and And yung problem kasi namin sa team namin, sabi namin, how do we ensure na sustainable ito? Na kahit wala na tayo sa barangay ay patuloy pa rin nilang gagawin. So sabi namin, why don't we create a barangay mental health corner para if wala na tayo, meron silang tangible na resultang makikita. And need natin siyang i-institutionalize through a barangay ordinance para kahit wala na tayo, meron silang ownership sa project na iyon. Kasama po doon yung monthly po na event ng Mental Health Corner kung saan magagather po sila ng mga bata sa barangay. Tsaka dun po sila magkakaroon ng mga learning sessions kasama ng ating mga na-train na volunteers from the barangay. So magkakaroon sila ng 3 oras na session kung saan mabibigyan ng pagkakataon na turuan yung mga bata na maglaro. Kasi we give emphasis to learn and play para sa mga bata. So, kasama po doon sa mga binigay namin ay mga storybooks at saka mga coloring materials na gagamitin po nila sa kanilang mga sessions. And then, at the same time po ay magkakaroon rin ng mga session kung saan yung mga bata na hindi nag-aaral, which is medyo marami po yung ganung kaso sa barangay, ay tuturuan ng basic na pagsusulat, tsaka basic po na pagbabasa. So, ayun po yung monthly na programa ng Mental Health Corner. And if wala pong programa naman, yung Mental Health Corner po ay bukas para sa mga kabataan at para sa mga miyembro rin ng mga komunidad na mayroong pinagdadaanan at saka hindi po komportable or hindi po ganoon ka-safe yung pakiramdam nila sa sarili nilang mga tahanan.
Ano ba yung mga broad steps na pinagdaanan nyo from the very beginning until it was passed ng mental health ordinance?
So, nag-research po kasi kami kung meron bang mga existing policies sa barangay related sa mental health and wala talaga, as in wala. Pero nung nagtanong kami sa mga kagawad, meron silang sinusubukan sanang i-integrate na programa. Ang problema nga lang, wala silang budget for it. Tapos yung perang ginagamit nila pang finance ay parang pera mismo ng mga personal na pera ng mga kagawad. Tapos sabi nila na gusto nila yung yung inisyatibo, pero they can't really sustain it kasi nga kulang sa pera. So ayun, yung sabi namin na yung pinakamabisang paraan talaga para magkaroon ng funding is gawin itong programa ng barangay. And need talaga ng barangay ordinance para mayroong appropriation ng funding. So, kinausap namin yung mga opisyal ng SK tsaka ng barangay mismo, sabi namin na if gusto ninyong magkaroon ng tamang budget dito, need talagang ipasa yung barangay ordinance. Tapos, if na may problema kayo kung paano siya simulan, tutulungan namin kayo. So, yung kasamahan ko sa team ay isang grant writer at nagsusulat rin katrabaho ang ibang mga organisasyon and hiningi namin yung tulong niya talaga sa pag-draft ng barangay ordinance. Tapos katulong namin doon yung SK chairman na si PJ, yung SK chairman ng Barangay San Juan at chinek din niya na nagdagdag din siya kung ano yung gusto niya, kung sino yung mga tao na need na mag-facilitate ng mental health corner, ano yung mga kailangan para mag-qualify siya bilang mental health corner, paano yung programa, once a month ba, twice a month ba, paano i-gather yung mga bata, how do we ensure yung effectivity, ayun po yung ginawa namin. Tapos, since mayroon na pong appropriate funding, yung ginawa rin namin, nag-extend po kami ng call for help sa other organizations and universities. So, nag-donate po sila ng napakaraming mga libro at dinala po namin doon mga libro at mga learning materials before namin na-launch yung barangay na mental health corner.
On a more personal level, parang how was the experience working with various stakeholders sa paglalabi nitong ordinance na to?
Hindi po siya naging madali. Kasi nga, una, marami ka kasing taong need na kausapin, marami kang taong need harapin. Tapos, hindi mo kasi pwedeng i-enforce sa kanila yung paniniwala mo. Need mo silang pakinggan, need mong tingnan kung saan ba nanggagaling yung ganitong perspektibo nila. Bakit kaya ganito yung sinasabi nila? Yung isang encounter namin during our house-to-house campaign tungkol sa mental health, tinanong namin, parang meron kami kasing checklist para mag-grasp namin yung kanilang current understanding ng mental health. Tapos tinanong namin sila na, dapat ka bang matakot sa isang tao na mayroong mental health illness? Tapos sabi nila, oo naman, kasi delikado sila. What if baliw yun? What if biglang manakit yun? What if biglang wala pala siya sa, baka nasa manic episode siya, tapos baka may gawing masama. So, yun yung mga iba sa mga sagot nila na hindi siya yung tamang pagkakaintindi natin ng tao na mayroong mental health illness. Pero need nating intindihin bakit kaya ganito yung pagkakaintindi nila sa tao na mayroong mental health illness. So, need natin siyang tingnan sa perspektibo ng komunidad at hindi sa sarili nating pagkakaintindi. Kasi need na natin i-acknowledge na mayroon talagang gaps. And that's the reason why we are there. Kasi need nating i-bridge yung gaps na ganito.
Very inspiring talaga si Jen. Tsaka yung youth organization niya na Atipan PH para do sa mga kabataang gustong makatulong sa kanilang communities in alternative ways. Her story just proves that kahit na hindi tayo elected sa LGUs natin, meron pa rin tayong say sa mga polisiya sa ating community. Kaya pa rin nating makatulong to forward advocacies in our localities.
At nakakatuwa din actually na nakita natin yung connection ng SK sa ating mga youth organizations katulad ng Atipan PH. Pinapatunayan lang din talaga nito na merong mahalagang papel na ginagampanan ng SK in terms of bridging the voices of the youth sa ating government units.
Ito rin yung dahilan kung bakit kailangan natin ng epektibong reforma para mas mapaunlad yung implementasyon ng SK sa ating mga barangay na siyang susi rin sa growth and pag-strengthen ng youth participation sa communities. So, let's listen again to Af, who will give us a brief history of the SK and what went down in 2015 when the reform was passed.
The SK is an old institution. It was here in 60s pa actually. So matagal na siyang nandyan. And ever since, the SK was really looked at as opportunity for young people to participate lalo na sa political affairs natin at the local level, especially at the barangay. But before the reform came about, noong 2015 if I'm not mistaken, there were discussions about abolishing the SK as a process because yung dating sabi doon, breeding ground siya ng mga trapo, breeding ground siya for corruption. Because napapansin nila yung people running for the SK and ultimately getting to positions, later on, nagiging involved in some issues related to corruption. So there was a lot of conversation about, okay, let's abolish na natin kasi sayang, hindi niya nagagawa yung purpose niya. But there was a group of people who pushed for reform rather than abolition. Baguhin natin instead na tanggalin natin because naniniwala sila na kaya naman ibibigyan natin ng magandang pagkakataon yung ating mga kabataan.
One of the groups that pushed for reform was the SK Reform Coalition. Binubuo ito ng ilang SK officials, Katipunan ng Kabataan members, Akbayan Youth, the youth and student sector of the National Anti-Poverty Commission o NAPCYSS, at iba pang local youth organizations. Bukod sa koalisyon, ang National Youth Commission at SK National Federation ay kaisa rin sa pagrekomenda ng pagbabago sa SK at hindi ang pag-abolish nito. Para ma-identify ang mga problema ng SK, nagsagawa ng comprehensive national study ang University of the Philippines Center for Integrative Studies, katulong ng NAPCYSS, UNICEF at gobyerno. At ang results?
Ang resulta ay ang lahat ng binanggit na ating guests mula episode 1. All of the above, ganun. Pero, meron silang napansing very interesting observation. Yun daw, well-performing SKs ay yung mga may support system. Ito ulit si Af.
But back then, there were two areas na ang robust, ang ganda ng experiences ng youth when it comes to participation sa policy process rin natin. And these two areas were Naga City and Cagayan de Oro. So these two areas were primarily looked at as the examples of how the SK could function. And yung nakita natin sa dalawang areas na to ay meron sila tinatawag na youth council or Youth Development Council. So back then, meron tayong SK elected official, pero wala tayong counterpart na civil society, kumbaga. But in Naga and in CDO, the government there allowed a process for young people, not elected, to participate in the process through the council. So sa Naga, I think, known to as a People's Council, but I think may youth counterpart sila. And sa CDO, meron nga silang Oro Development Youth Council. So, ito yung naging model ng base law na ginawa ng SK Reform Act. So sabi nila, okay, if we give enough space, young people would actually participate and do better in terms of civic and political interventions. Kasi nakita natin nag-work sa CDO, nakita natin nag-work sa Naga. So this allowed them, when trying to come up with a law, na kaya, na hindi kailangan abolition agad.
After the study and some stakeholder consultations, the SK Reform Coalition put together a version of their SK Reform Bill at nilabi nila ito sa Kongreso. At that time, nagsiserve pa sa kanyang termino si dating Senator Bam Aquino na siyang naging co-author at co-sponsor ng SK Reform Act of 2015. Here he is again to tell us about the most important provisions of the SK Reform Act that sought to address the long-standing issues of the SK.
So I'll cite three things, three reforms in the SK Reform Act. So una, yung pag-adjust ng age. I think that was one of the biggest reforms. Hindi yun pinag-uusapan na big reform, but that's a big reform. Kasi nung ginawa siyang 15 to 17 years old, and hindi na age of majority yung mga kabataan, agad-agad, naging problema na dyan is that the 15 to 17-year-olds really had a difficult time debating, talking, negotiating, kasi everything's a negotiation, di ba? Negotiating with their elders pagdating sa mga programa para sa mga kabataan. They couldn't go into contracts, so kontrolado kaagad sila if the barangay didn't want to release money for young people. They couldn't sign a contract on their own. So that age automatically made it difficult. So one of the big reforms was inakit namin yung age. And umabot ka na, to your early 20s, which I think, any self-respecting youth leader, kung early 20s ka, siguro kaya mo nang makipagsabayan sa mga ibang leaders, di ba? So, that's a big thing. And agad-agad, makikita mo na kaagad, di mo tinanggal yung 15 to 17 from the KK or yung Katipunan ng Kabataan. Pero yung leaders, ginawa mo siyang, tinaas mo ng konti yung edad. And yun pa lang, I think, malaking bagay na. Okay. Pangalawa was the Anti-Political Dynasty Clause, the only law in the Philippines that fulfills our constitution. Grabe, no? The only law in the Philippines, well, totoo yun, but the only law in the Philippines na merong Anti-Political Dynasty Clause as stated in our constitution, di ba? So, it's not only a good law, it's constitutional as well, di ba? So, na-fulfill niya yun. And ang ina-address niyan is that yung mga SK, marami sa kanila napipilitan lang maging SK kasi anak sila ng kapitan, kagawad, mayor, congressman, senator, whatever. So, many of them were forced into it, and you can look at it also as control kasi syempre kung anak mo is another seat in the sanggunian, mas makontrol mo rin yon. And we just pushed through with it. I was also surprised na napasa siya. That provision was, nobody objected, no? In fact, the senators who pushed it, you'd be surprised that it was 4 senators who came from political families, but the rest of us supported it. And napasa siya. Nagulat ako na walang nag-object, and it's now the law. And if ever we do pass an anti-political dynasty law at the higher levels, we can point to the experience of the SK that it is very, very implementable. Kasi yung isang batikos sa anti-political dynasties, hindi siya implementable. No, it's actually implementable as we've seen here with the SK. So that's the second biggest reform. The third biggest reform was something our office pet provision namin, which was the LYDC or the Local Youth Development Council. The mandated creation of a local youth council composed of youth leaders from non-SK youth leaders. So you're talking about your student councils, your NGOs, your church-based youth leaders, your social-civic organizations gaya ng Red Cross Youth, ganyan, no? So from religious groups, social-civic groups, NGOs, to schools, may espasyo ang sektor ng kabataan sa SK. And the SK has to work, so mandated yung pag-convene sa kanila para the SK is forced to work with other youth leaders as well. Because in our experience, we saw that the best SKs were those that weren't isolated from other youth groups. Kapag yung SK nakikipagtrabaho sa mga youth leaders ng ibang mga sektor, makikita mo mas malawak ang kanilang perspective pagdating sa mga programa para sa mga kabataan. And in general, mas empowered din siya. Kasi all of those youth groups raise money on their own. So, yung SK, natututo rin sila na, okay, hindi naman pala ako beholden to this budget. Kasi yung 10% barangay budget, actually, ang lit lang yan compared to what these other youth leaders are able to raise with the public or with their mother organizations. So, we mandated that, pati rin yung pagkakaroon ng local youth development officer na naka-base sa mga cities and municipalities. So, na-enshrine that your city and municipality needs to have an LYDO, that is the secretariat for your LYDC, and your SKs need to coordinate with the LYDC as a matter of law. May mga iba pang mga provisions, but for me, those three were really the biggest reforms.
While deliberations were ongoing in Congress, the SK Reform Coalition worked with the DILG, UNICEF, NYC, and other institutions to create a national youth voters campaign and an SK guidebook that would be used in capacity trainings with SKs, among others. On November 4 and 11, 2015, pinasa ng both Senate and House of Representatives ang SK Reform Bill. And on January 15, 2016, finally inaprubahan na ito ni former President Benigno Aquino III at naisabatas bilang Republic Act No. 10742.
Ngayon, mas naiintindihan na natin kung ano nga ba ang pinagdaanan ng SK Reform Act bago ito maipatupad sa mga local government units natin o LGU. Ang ganda i-highlight na sa pagkakabuo ng batas na to, makikita natin yung kahalagahan ng dialogo at pag-alam natin sa mga realities sa communities para makabuo ng epektibong mga polisiya. Narinig din natin yan sa experience ni Jen sa pagbuo nila ng mental health ordinance sa kanilang barangay.
Agree tayo dyan. Kaya nga, doon pumapasok ang involvement ng kabataan. Nakakatuwa na yung batas na to, rooted siya sa experience ng ating SK. Tapos, youth groups din yung naglobby nito sa mga concerned officials. So, all throughout, may papel ang kabataan.
Pero syempre, hindi lang sa legislation natatapos ang lahat. Kung naaalala nyo yung reform process na diniscuss natin at the start of the episode, meron pang susunod na step dyan, ang implementation and monitoring. Ano kayang itsura ng reforma sa SK pagkatapos ng pagsasabatas nito? Pero sa next episode na natin yan pag-uusapan, so stay tuned!
And that was the second episode of Season 2 of Balangkas ng Bukas, Stories of Major Policy Reform, a podcast by Youth Leadership for Democracy and a project of the United States Agency for International Development and the Asia Foundation, powered by Puma Podcast. If you haven't heard the first part of the story, check it out on the Teka Teka page wherever you listen to podcasts. If you haven't heard the first part of the story, check it out on the Teka Teka page wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay tuned for episode 3 next Thursday. This episode was written by Adriel Nesperos and co-written and produced by Macy Hoven with editing by Joe Salcedo. The version you heard today was put together with the help of Jill Caro and Anthony Tobias. I'm Bella Perez Rubio. Thanks for listening.